Hello everyone, it's Carrie, and today's video is a big collab I was lucky enough to be a part of with a super fun theme of video games. Here's a quick peek at all of the participants' amazing work, so please make sure to check out those after you watch this one if you haven't already. This collab was hosted by ANASTAZIA Custom, and the collab participants are Dollumentary Dolls, DOLLMOTION, Kyra's Workshop, My Minimon, The Dolly Geek, TheDollFairy, 10 Dance OOAK, Doll's Brand New Look, Creatures Delau, TheDollMILL, and Tiamat Creations, and me, Skeriosities. Extra special thanks to ANASTAZIA Customs for coordinating and Kyra's Workshop for the work on this super cool intro video. The character I chose for this collab is Nariko from Heavenly Sword. Heavenly Sword is a game released by Sony in 2007 for the PlayStation 3. It involves lots of action and martial arts, and the story is narrated by the main character Nariko. It involves the sword of a heavenly deity, which was used to fight a demon. When the battle was won, the sword was left in the mortal world and is now wielded by Nariko, who keeps it safe. The sword changes depending on the stance of the character, and in one particular stance the sword becomes two different blades, which is the version I'm making today. So in this video I'll be showing the full process of costume creation, face up, and hair, so stay tuned to the end for the final look. I thought the perfect base doll to use for this gorgeous Asian warrior would be Cleo Denial. So here I'm using a brick red color to paint over the factory paint to make a base for the hair. I decided to paint right over the black because otherwise I'd need several coats of this red. I'm rooting her with this lovely red cane Kalan synthetic fiber, and the color is slightly different than that of the character, but I thought it would be perfect to create the wild flowing hair Nariko has in the video game. I'm using a little bit more around the edges than I normally would root, just because I knew she'd have a big ponytail and I wanted the edges to be super thick. So here's how she looks with that hair. I'm using some Fabri-Tac to tack the inside to make sure the hair doesn't loosen. So to get started with the costume, I am pulling out my samples of Worbla to create the armor. Worbla is a thermoplastic modeling material, and you can heat it with hot air, steam, or I believe even hot water. It's moldable and similar to clay, but I find it a lot easier to work with for projects like this because you can start by just cutting out shapes. You heat it up a little bit and it can be formed to whatever mold you have or shape you want, and it becomes hard again as it cools. It also can be reheated and molded again, so all of the scraps can be molded back into themselves, so you really don't have any waste with this product. It comes in this brown, black, and clear, which each have slightly different properties but are all used by heating. So this product is typically used by cosplayers, but I like to use it occasionally on my dolls because it's so versatile. And Worbla can be purchased on Amazon, eBay, and some other like cosplayer stores, I believe, but I'll put some links in the description box below. I'm starting out by using my heat gun to heat up the Worbla that I've just drawn the swords on. Once it's just a little bit hot, then I'll cut it out. It makes it a little bit easier to cut. You can see it's a little flexible at this point, but when it cools off, it gets much more stiff. And just like I said, it's so much easier than clay because you can just cut it, and I don't have to use any kind of wire that can make the swords a little bit thicker than I want them. So I'm using my crocodile to pop out some of these little pieces that I can use for embellishments around the handle. And to add those to the Worbla, I can just heat up the sword, and then I heat up the little dot and then push them together, and it's stuck there permanently as long as it's heated up enough. So I even kind of messed up the area around. I got it a little too hot and heated up a little bit too much around the curve around the handle, and I molded it back together and it was fine. So this product, like I said, it's very versatile and works really well for dolls. So for the handle, I thought that I'd cut out a little strip, kind of deviated from what I was going to do there initially, and I heat up this little strip of Worbla to make it into sort of look like a tape, and wrap it around the handle. So then when it's cooled off, it has the shape I want and the 3D effect. So you see I kind of heat it up throughout instead of getting it super hot at first, because if you get it too hot, it just becomes too soft and it'll break. You can see I'm having a little bit of trouble with that one. When it's super skinny like that, it'll blow all over and then it sticks to itself if it's too hot. So on the second sword, I'm doing the same concept and wrapping that around the handle. So the next step is going to look a little bit funny until the final results, but stick with me. So one of the problems that I have with Worbla is that it has this funny texture. It's like a rough texture and it doesn't sand down very easily. So I use this wood glue on top of it, and you have to use several layers, but when I do it, particularly for swords, it really makes a nice base. I didn't have to sand it down, but wood glue is sandable, so if I wanted to, I could. And it worked out perfectly for the swords because it kind of levels out. It's like self-leveling, and then the edges become sharp looking the way that it dries, so it works perfectly. So I did probably about 4 or 5 coats of this, and then on the final coat I didn't let it dry before I took the next step. So before I get to that, while I'm letting that dry, I'm doing her hip armor. I also did this for some pieces around her legs and a bracelet around her upper arm. So basically for all of the armor that this doll had. Which isn't much. She just had a hip armor. I wonder why she just needed to protect that one hip. So what I'm doing after I cut out the initial shape of the piece and measured it to her hip, I'm cutting out a piece to go around to give it some three-dimensional detail. And if I had not heated it up too much, it probably would have worked out perfectly, but then it stretched out a little bit, so I cut it and reheated and molded it again. If anyone is an expert on Worbla and has any Worbla tips, it would be great if you put them in the comment section below. So once I have that attached, then I heat it up a little bit more to make sure it's well and attached, and then I use this little popsicle stick to shape it a little bit better. Since it's still hot and I didn't like how skinny that top piece was, I was able to peel it off and add a different piece. And after I made each of these pieces, I coated them with about 3 or 4 coats, probably about 4 coats of the wood glue, letting it dry in between. Then I heat it up again after, I'm taping her just to make sure. If you heat up the Worbla too much and then attach it to the doll, it'll stick to them. So it's best to coat it with some tape, and I find it pops off very easily that way. So I heated that up and I just molded it to her hip for it to be shaped perfectly. So this is the part I was talking about that's going to look a little funny, but stick with me. So I'm using different kinds of stickers that are like embossed stickers, different three-dimensional shapes, and just sticking them on. and like the end piece was a doily, and the green pieces were just all stickers. So you'll see what I'm doing with that in a little bit. Here I'm working a little bit on the leg armor, working with these tiny little pieces. With all of the work that I did on this doll, this video would have been quite a bit longer, so I couldn't show every little step of the process, but if you have any questions, please let me know in the comment section below. I'll be happy to answer what I can. So I really wanted those leg parts to stay put because I knew that they were going to be standalone with over top of a pair of like leg warmers that you'll see later. So I wanted them molded very well. So one of the steps that I take, particularly with dolls that I'm customizing for commissions, or if they're going to show a lot of skin, then I like to do some detail work to the body and remove the seams and sand it down. So I'm using an X-Acto knife just to remove the seams around the legs and arms particularly, and just sanding them down. And then with commissions, I do pretty much as extensively as they would like. So now that I have the stickers down on top of the wood glue and it is dried, now I'm taking some black paint. This is like chalkboard paint. It's one of my preferred paints to use when I'm painting black because it's kind of like a primer in itself, chalkboard paint. I really enjoy using it. So I'm painting all of the pieces black with that chalkboard paint. And then this is when they will really come to life. I'm using this product and I wasn't able to find it online anywhere to offer a link in the description box description box below. So I'm showing you what they are. I got them at Tuesday morning. They're 3 different colors: copper, bronze, and silver. And it's kind of like a rub and buff. I'll leave a link to rub and buff in the description box below because it's a similar product. But I just get a little bit on my fingers. It's kind of like a paint product, but it has this particular property that makes it easy to rub on to what you're doing and give 3D effects. And I'm adding it a little bit, or buffing a little bit more around the edge to make it look sharper. And then going very lightly over the stickers that I added just to make them appear 3-dimensional. And see, that really made that design pop a little bit better. So I don't want too much of the product on my finger because then it'll get into the crevices and take away that black that gives it that nice 3-dimensional detail. Later on I went back and I added a little bit of the bronze and copper to them too, just to make them look a little bit cooler. And like I said, I buff a little bit more around the edges to make them look sharp. So I used the bronze color on the leg armor and did the same thing. The areas that you want to show more gold, you press a little bit harder, but very lightly, in areas where you just kind of want to dust it and leave some of that black. And now onto the hip armor. Like I said, I'm pressing a little bit more around the edges where I want it to show more gold. And then in the center, I added the stickers, and I'm just buffing out very lightly to pull those out. It's not the exact design that's on the character, but it gives the same kind of effect. So onto the costume. If you watch my previous videos, you can see several videos where I make this similar corset and short pattern that I use for a lot of the base costume for my dolls. For the fabric that's in this particular character, she has kind of it's like an ivory or white draping around her hip, and it has a gold embossed fabric, or it has like a dragon detail on it. I didn't have a dragon stamp, but I kind of thought these flowers would give kind of the same effect, or the illusion that it was the same or similar fabric. So I'm using this gold ink, and then also mixing it with some embossing ink. And I don't like how it looks here or how it turned out, but it actually worked really well once the character was put together. It gave the look I was hoping for. Now I'm using this clear embossing powder because I thought that it would give it a neat effect if it was raised a little bit, like three-dimensional. It works a lot better on paper, but it did work close to what I wanted it to do. So I shook off that extra powder and put that back into my holder. And then I take my heat gun, and I'll show a little bit of a close-up so you can see what it does, but it heats up, kind of melts that embossing powder, so it gives it more of a sheen. So it really pulls it out a little bit better. It made the gold shine a little bit more. So I just wanted a hint of a gold design on the pattern, and it worked out pretty well. So I made sure it was all good and heated up. And then I cut it out into a little sort of a half or quarter moon shape, and folded it over and used this mini flat iron to keep the shape of the crinkles. I'm trying to heat the edge of this trim that I'm using to melt it. If it's like a polyester or sort of cheaper fabric, it will work, but this must be a good trim because it wouldn't melt, it more like burned. If you do that, please be careful. I've had some things go up in flames and not be able to blow them out before, so please be careful if you're using a lighter for this technique. But it works pretty well for edges where you don't have to use like a seam fray check glue. You can just burn it, but it doesn't work on everything, especially if it's cotton. So there's the skirt, and I just sewed it directly to the pair of shorts. And I'm pulling together the corset and adding a sleeve. And then I'm going to use this brown vinyl and trim it with some gold paint, and use that for the belt and for some straps around her stomach. Using a piece of black warbler for the piece that goes through and holds the strap together. I used a grommet for that detail where the strap comes through to hold it together. I'm sorry I'm not showing every little bit of this process, but like I said, it took me several hours and this video would be way too long. I'm using this little Martha Stewart sort of sticker and peeling off a piece of it to use as the detail at the end of the belt. And there's the straps that I added to the top, and I'm just adding a little bit of beading to it. Nariko has these chopsticks in her hair, so I took some toothpicks and sanded them down with a nail file, making the ends round and the top flat so they look like chopsticks, testing them out on a Ghoulia doll. And then I stained them with this brown Copic marker and added a little bit of gold detail with some gold paint. So like I said, stay tuned to the end and you'll see some of the final photos as well as just a look of me putting it all together. But on to the face up. Since this was a special face up, I'm pulling out my very favorite Caran d'Ache Museum Aquarelle watercolor pencils. These are just so creamy and I preserve them specifically for really important customs. So this is, of course, my favorite part of the process and where I dedicate most of my time. My face-up process is very important, and I'm constantly trying to level up there. If you have any questions on what I'm doing, please let me know in the comment section below, like I said. So I always start with about 4 coats of Mr. Super Clear. I've been asked several times about those who are trying to do this having difficulty with getting the white to show up. I find that if the white isn't showing up, that it's the problem is the primer, and it's best to hold the can about 8 inches from the doll and use 4 coats to start. If you only use a very light coat, or if you're spraying too close, it's not going to give you that nice grit that you want to start on. I hope that helps, and let me know if you have any questions. I'll help you the best I can. So if you're new to my channel, thank you so much for tuning in. I would love it if you would subscribe to catch my future videos. I'm an artist based in North Carolina, and my videos mainly revolve around my face-up process and how I strive to improve those skills, and I like to share things that I've learned for those who are looking to learn the craft or develop their own style. I also have begun sharing more of the extensive process of customizing, including costume creation and hairstyling. So I've been working mainly in customizing dolls since 2012 and started posting on social media and YouTube around that time. So check out my playlist for my previous work. I've got lots of tutorials and other dolls that I've created over the years. So Nariko has a very full lip, so I'm making sure that she's got a full pout and highlighting the bottom lip a little bit more than the top with some white and blending that out. Here I'm using the Caran d'Ache Museum Aquarelle that I showed earlier, but I'm also using Derwent and some Faber-Castell. And all of the supplies that I use are in the description box below. If there's anything you think is missing, let me know. So I gave her some highlights with some white. Sometimes I'll highlight with white, sometimes I'll use a pale peach. The brush that I'm using to apply the blush is just a eyeshadow brush from Dollar Tree. It's like a Wet n Wild, and it's really good because the bristles are super soft, so I love applying blush with that. Just adding several layers of color in the face up, and I usually spray at least once in between. With the Mr. Super Clear, I use the UV cut flat, and I'll spray in between to save my work with about 2 or 3 coats before the final 4 or 5 coats at the end. You want to make sure to add several coats at the end before adding any gloss to the eyes or lips or wherever you gloss, because once you add that gloss, if it's not sealed appropriately, then it can really disperse the colors underneath and ruin your work. So I use pan pastels mainly. I used to use Schmincke and Rembrandt, but now I pretty much exclusively use the pan pastels because they're super soft. They're made to be used with brushes, so they do have they're very highly pigmented and are super soft. But I do mix in every once in a while because of the limited color palette it comes in. I do sometimes need some other colors, so I'll pull out my other pastels. And sometimes I also make custom mixes with them. So like I said, the affiliate links for a lot of the supplies that I use are in the description box below. So once I finish, like I said, I give it about 4 or 5 coats of Mr. Super Clear, the UV cut flat, and then for this one I left the lips matte and glossed the eyes and adhered some BJD eyelashes. So here I'm just adding some highlights in there with some white acrylic. So onto the hair. So her hair is very thick right now, but I will do some thinning. I sprayed it with water and then applied a little bit of the styling gel. It's just an unscented styling gel from the Dollar Tree, just to give it some extra holding power. Once I do that, I brush it out pretty good and then pull out some bangs. Just pull out a little bit for the little phrase or long bang pieces that come out in the front, and I'll razor those down with a hairstyling razor. And I just do this kind of in sections and take my time with it so I don't get it too short too fast. So you'll see me thinning it out a little as we go. And then I pin those down to get them out of the way while I pull her hair into a high ponytail using a small rubber band. And I take out a bottom piece, a piece of the hair from the bottom, and then I'll wrap that around to hide the rubber band, and also to give her just a little bit of a more higher ponytail, because the character just has this wild high ponytail that with lots of pieces that move around. So I want to kind of mimic that the best I can. So doing it a couple times just to make sure it's the way I want it. And once I thin out the hair, it'll give it a little bit more lift, so you'll see that in a moment. It's really heavy right now. So I'm flattening out the bangs. I don't want them to stick up too high. I want them to be a little bit smooth and hang down, lay down a little bit better. So I'm adding this pomade. Just any kind of pomade would work. And then I'll heat it up again, and then I add some clips just to kind of try to get it to lay down a little bit flatter, and it works pretty well. This hair can take a high heat of about 350. This flat irons are a little bit hotter, so I just have to use it very quickly so it doesn't burn. Just move the flat iron over the hair very quick. So here I just showed a tiny bit of me sectioning that out so I can thin it and remove a lot of the hair. So I removed a lot of bulk at this point. And so the hair's a lot lighter and it has a lot more movement, and it doesn't pull the head back. That was my main concern with this full head of hair. Then I'm trying to sort of mimic the hairstyle in some of the photos that I used for reference, and twisting it up into one ponytail in the middle and then the rest of it just in pieces. And I'm taking a little bit of the pomade to make it look a little bit more piecey. So if you're interested in this doll, I'll be showing her along with my collection at the Mad Monster Party in Charlotte, North Carolina, February 22nd through the 24th. And after that show, my Etsy shop will be restocked, so check that out in the link below. If you're interested in any of my dolls or a commission, feel free to reach out to me on social media or email me at skeriosities@gmail.com, and all of that information is in the description box below. Before I show the final look, I just want to mention, please don't forget to check out the other videos of my fellow collaborators. They are some amazing creations, absolutely jaw-dropping work. The links to those channels are in the description box below, along with a playlist, so make sure to check those out. I was blown away with the work, and everybody was so super nice and fun to work with. Also, before I leave, if you like this video, I'd love it if you gave it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Stay tuned for a lot more fun characters, and hit the little bell so you'll be notified of those when those videos are released. I'm putting together a collection for the Mad Monster Party, doing a lot more musician dolls, so those will be coming soon. Let me know if you have any questions or comments in the comment section, and I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks again for watching. Bye!